Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good day. My name is Glenn MacDonald. I'm the project coordinator with the European Union Arab League project that is designed to support Arab League member states in their fight against illicit small arms. Our project is funded by the European Union and implemented by Interpol, the Small Arms Survey, and the World Customs Organization in collaboration with the Arab League. Today, we will provide you with some history of the project, along with a brief overview of our activities to date. Above all, we will focus on the training courses that we're offering to Arab League member states. Let me review the 4 chapters in our webinar. At the same time, I'll be introducing you to individual members of our project team. I begin chapter 1 with the project overview, which will be presented by Dekra Frawa, who is Project Officer Management, and Lubna Alam, Project Officer. Chapter 2, for today's webinar, will look at international transfer controls, including border controls, to be presented by Andrew Reynolds. He is the Small Arms and Light Weapons Project Coordinator at WCO. Chapter 3, on firearm investigative techniques, including tracing, will be presented by Ralph Martinez, who is Firearms Specialist at the Firearms Program at Interpol. Finally, stockpile management and security to be presented by Oisin Dawson, Weapons and Ammunition Management Specialist at the Small Arms Survey. With that, I hand things over to Dekra for the project overview. Dekra?
Thank you, Glenn.
My name is Dekra Frawa, and I'm a project officer management on illicit trafficking of illegal arms of the project. And I'm going to give you an overview about the project and about the different activities and trainings that we offer in the Arab states. This project is funded by the European Union and is implemented technically by the League of Arab States, Interpol, Small Arms Survey, and World Customs Organization, with, of course, the partnership of the League of Arab States on putting an end to the illicit arm trafficking. Normally, the project will extend to the 1st of July 2021, may be extended to further dates. According to 19th of November 2019, we have conducted a discussion on the priorities in order to set the following points, which are the international control on transfer of small arms and light arms. As a first part of this priority. The second point is to identify and stop sources of small illegal arms. The third point is the management of ammunition and security. The fourth is disarmament and rehab. The fifth is providing information and translation related to small arms and light arms concerning the activities. So we have first the sectoral coordination in the fact of an initial meeting among the Arab states in Cairo, and the final meeting again in Cairo. Then we have non-sectoral coordination. We had different workshops. The first one was in the UAE, and we would have other workshops, namely in North Africa, in the Kingdom of Morocco. Unfortunately, we were obliged to postpone the workshop on a further later date. And now concerning the training, as you know, the pandemic, the COVID-19 and the prohibitions of traveling have forced us to change those face-to-face trainings into virtual training, and there are basically 3 sessions provided by WCO, Interpol, and SAS, and normally it would count 60 hours of training all in all. If you'd like to learn more about this training project or about the project management, we would be pleased to hear from you, and we will be also pleased to give you an idea about all the steps that need to be followed to earn this training. Thank you very much. And now I leave the floor to my friend Lubna Alam to speak about translations and studies. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dhikra. Good morning, everyone. I am Lubna Lam, and I'm an employee of a project of the European Union and League for Arab States on a project on the survey of small arms. And I'm going to give you an idea about the different publications and the first stage of the project, so the translation of the different documents into Arabic, one of the main activities of a project between the European Union and the League of Arab States in order to offer the relating details in Arabic. And here I'm going to give you an idea about the continuous translation activities of documents and of publications relating to a small arms survey and light weapons and other organizations' publications during this phase of the project. Concerning the small arms survey publications, we have translated a guide to the UN small arms process, a lesson about the cycle of the different small arms, the converted firearms in Europe from legal to lethal, estimating global civilian held firearms numbers. Another study, a guide to identification of small arms, light weapons, and associated ammunition, and the conclusion of the small arms symposia, and then arm control 2.0, operationalizing SDG target 16.4. Then an introductory guide to the identification of small arms, light weapons, and associated ammunition, and a report on beyond the control of the small arms, light weapons, and associated ammunition on an ad hoc basis use. Also, other publications provided by other organizations, including the EU Firearms Directive, the WCO illicit trade report 2018 and 2019, Section 6 on security, EU Council resolution on establishing a common approach on the elements of end-user certificates in the context of the export of small arms and light weapons and their ammunition. And we are looking forward to translating more documents and more studies relating to the small arms and light weapons in later stage of the project. And of course, we are attuned to all your requests or to any kind of documents or guides you'd like to have translated. Now we move to Andrew Reynolds pertaining to WCO expert. Thank you.
Thank you, Lubna. Thank you very much indeed. Good morning, everyone. Please allow me to welcome you to this presentation, which will outline the World Customs Organization course that is currently being presented for delivery as a part of this project. My name is Andrew Reynolds, and I am the project coordinator for small arms and light weapons for the World Customs Organization Security Program. The World Customs Organization Security Program activities are focused around 5 key initiatives. First is passenger controls. For example, implementing standards and targeting systems, which utilize advanced passenger information and passenger name record information to target foreign terrorist fighters. Secondly, the countering of improvised explosive devices, their precursor chemicals, and component parts through our program Global Shield activities. Thirdly, inhibiting the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction by limiting illegitimate access to strategic and dual-use goods through our Strategic Trade Control Enforcement Program activities. Next is restricting terrorist financing and money laundering through global operations targeting bulk cash smuggling. And finally, of course, restricting the illicit trade in small arms and light weapons. The first module of the WCO course proper is an introduction to small arms and light weapons. It presents the topic of small arms control, specifically at the border for customs administrations. The issues around control of small arms that make it unique for customs authorities to face are discussed. These issues include such things as the worldwide manufacture of small arms and components, which makes our risk management far more complex. The ability to break down a small arm into multiple components for ease of concealment, their long lifespan, and their ability to be traded multiple times. And we examine the differences in national legislation around ownership and supply of small arms that can be exploited by criminal and extremist elements. The module also examines the methods of diversion that are used for small arms to enter the illicit market. Next module is titled Documentation, Licensing and Verification. And in this module, we look to examine how diversion occurs from the point of sale of a shipment of small arms to it ending up in the hands of criminal or extremist groups. We look at the regulatory systems in place that should govern the purchase of small arms and also the issuing of export and transshipment licenses. We will also closely examine the roles of agents and brokers within this process. And we will finally scrutinise in close detail the documentation that should travel with any commercial shipment of small arms. To complement the module on diversion and documentation, we have a module on counterfeit and forgery detection techniques. As many of the large-scale diversions that have been encountered have used counterfeit or forged documentation, this module seeks to serve as a basic introduction to the types of security features that may be encountered on officially issued documentation. And we also examine the procedures to follow in all cases of doubt when presented with documentation that may be counterfeit or forged. For all customs authorities, our risk management procedures are the most effective method of controlling shipments at the border. The ability to identify high-risk passengers, cargo shipments, and vessels, and focus our enforcement efforts within those highest risk elements allows for both trade facilitation as well as effective protection of society. by merging the broad picture of worldwide trends, refining it to a regional level, and then examining specific instances of small arms smuggling, officers can form a solid picture of the scope of methods used to illicitly move small arms across borders. This module also examines the other assistance that the WCO can offer in terms of intelligence and information sharing, such as our Regional Intelligence Liaison Office network. As technology moves forward, so does the opportunity for criminal and extremist elements to exploit new areas of concern. We have modules examining several new technologies. We look at polymer components and the threats they offer to law enforcement at the border. There's also the concern of 3D printed firearms, which could offer the possibility of manufacture of serviceable firearms outside of the control of the regulatory authorities. We also look at the rise of illicit weapon conversion, from blank firing weapons to acoustic expansion weapons, as well as other types of weaponry that we are seeing being smuggled in large numbers into both North Africa and the Middle East. Our next module deals with component parts of small arms and light weapons when they are broken down in order to be smuggled across the border. With the average assault rifle breaking down into 65 component parts, the identification of these components can be very difficult, and the ease with which they can be concealed is of great concern. This module brings to officers techniques to be able to identify some of the most common and vital component parts used in both physical examination and the use of technology, such as transmission X-ray. These are some of the modules available in the World Customs Organization course for frontline officers and managers. Finally, in my presentation, let's look forward to what we hope to achieve with phase 2 of the project. Firstly is a continuation of activity from phase 1. National training for customs officers is the most important activity of the project for the World Customs Organization. And national trainings provide frontline officers with the skills and tools they need to successfully detect illicit arms at the border. When we start to see the removal of travel restrictions, the project will again be in a position to conduct face-to-face in-country training, which will allow for more practical training, such as the use of technical equipment and familiarization of weapon components by hand for officers. Thirdly, we are looking to introduce Train the Trainer events. These are one of the main focuses for phase 2 of the project. We can bring officials from participating countries to a central location to offer a more in-depth training program, the aim of which is to allow these officers to return to their home administrations with the necessary tools and expertise to be able to cascade small arms training to their colleagues in country. They will also have the ability to share experiences and knowledge with colleagues from other League of Arab States member states and make connections that will last long after the training is complete. Follow-up support will also be offered to the administrations to assist them with adapting the WCO training materials to better suit their individual countries' needs. And it's this part of the program which allows for both ownership and expertise from within the region, which will lead to increased sustainability of the capacity building effort, which is always at the focus of World Customs Organization capacity building efforts. Thank you very much for your attention. Please allow me to pass you to my colleague, Ralph Martinez from Interpol. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Hello, my name is Ralph Martinez. I'm a firearms specialist in charge of small arms and light weapons in the firearms program at Interpol. As a recently retired supervisory special agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, I bring 31 years of federal law enforcement experience to the LAS project. I'm honored to be a part of this LAS project and eager to share with you a brief course overview of Interpol's available tools and training to assist you in your organization in your mission to combat the illicit traffic in small arms and light weapons. The project's objective for Interpol is to support LAS member states in combating the illicit trade in and proliferation of small arms and light weapons. To this end, Interpol has developed a training program specifically for frontline police officers and investigators, forensic laboratory specialists, and prosecutors. This program aims at addressing the priority areas identified by the EU LAS Strategic Dialogue Framework. I will now share with you 9 training modules offered by Interpol to assist your police, customs, forensic personnel, and prosecutors in their fight against illegal firearms trafficking. Module 1 will introduce the participant to some of the tools offered by Interpol to combat the illicit trade in and proliferation of small arms and light weapons. The participant will also learn about the 18 different databases held and administered by Interpol and available to each member country's NCB through the I-24/7 Secure Global Police Communication System. They will become familiar with the ones geared specifically towards firearms identification and recovery. These are Interpol Firearms Reference Table, Illicit Arms Records and Tracing Management System, and Interpol Ballistics Information Network. Each of these databases has a specific use, but when used together, they will provide the investigator an invaluable crime-fighting tool against illicit firearms trafficking. The participant will learn how to operate and use each of these specific firearms-related databases, each with its unique attributes and capabilities, such as identifying firearms. The Interpol Firearms Reference Table, or IFRT, is an interactive online tool that helps law enforcement officers identify and describe firearms using a standardized methodology. It contains more than 250,000 firearm references and 50,000 firearm images. Comparison of ballistics data. The Interpol Ballistics Information Network, or IBIN, is the only large-scale international ballistics data sharing network in the world. It provides intelligence to law enforcement agencies through the centralized storage and cross-comparison of ballistics imaging in order to find connections between crimes from different countries that might otherwise remain undetected. Tracing firearms. The Illicit Arms Records and Tracing Management System, or IARMS, is a database containing lost, stolen, trafficked, and smuggled firearms, as well as facilitating firearms tracing. Police worldwide can enter illicit arms in the IARMS database and can search recovered firearms to check if they have been reported lost or stolen, trafficked, or smuggled. IARMS will allow law enforcement officers to trace all recovered firearms to their last legal owner, thus identifying the moment when and where the firearm was diverted into the illegal commerce. Module 2 will provide the participant with a general overview and basic understanding of the physical and technical characteristics and functionality of firearms, thus providing the participant with the confidence to safely handle a firearm for inspection and transport. The purpose of this module is to provide law enforcement, forensic personnel, and prosecutors a common language or vocabulary used to describe and identify firearms. The participants will become familiar with the different terms used to define and classify firearms. This will help participants develop more effective skills for identifying and tracing firearms through better knowledge of their physical, technical, commercial, and manufacturing characteristics. This module will review firearms nomenclature, types, and actions as a method of identifying firearms. The participant will become familiar with the basic fundamental understanding of firearm safety while receiving an introduction into the anatomy of the various firearm mechanisms. They will learn to recognize and understand which markings are relevant and are used to uniquely identify each firearm in order to conduct a successful trace. Whether conducting inquiries, international firearms traces, preparing affidavits, introducing firearms into a court of law, or completing an evidence room documents, identifying firearms will simplify your work, increase efficiency, and improve your ability to communicate professionally about firearms. Module 3 will introduce the participant into the different variations of the AK-47 rifle. The purpose of this module is to provide and prepare the participant with the tools needed to correctly identify the many versions of the Kalashnikov rifles. They will learn to interpret different markings and nuances on AK variant rifles for the purpose of identifying and tracing. Many of the AK rifles recovered by police were made exclusively for military service and do not contain the civilian required markings, such as the make, the model, or the caliber, or the country of origin, making it difficult to impossible to trace. The participant will explore 8 different Kalashnikov variant rifles and become familiar with the different locations on each, such as the fire selector area and the rear sights, to gather critical information to include factory identification marks and symbols, which will assist in the deciphering and determining the make, the model, and the country of origin of the recovered AK-47 rifle, so that a successful trace can be initiated. Module 4 will introduce the participant into the nature of illicit firearms trafficking and its resulting impact on armed violence and the benefit of implementing a firearms recovery protocol. The purpose of this module is to provide the participant with a basic understanding of firearms trafficking and recommended investigative steps that can be taken following the initial recovery of a firearm. The participant will learn reasons why firearms are trafficked, identify source and market areas for firearms, learn to recognize firearms trafficking indicators, and will discuss the different methods and types of firearms trafficking schemes. The participant will be shown the benefits and purpose of utilizing a national firearms recovery protocol incorporating 3 different law enforcement disciplines: investigations, forensic laboratory, intelligence coordination. Used together will assist investigators in recognizing and dismantling an illegal firearms trafficking organization. The course will explore best practices in developing a national firearms focal point as an interagency collaboration designed to collect, analyze, and distribute intelligence data on crime guns using cutting-edge forensic science and crime gun evidence to support investigations and prosecutions of violent criminals. The participant will learn that tracing a firearm can close the gap between the last known retail purchaser and the weapon found at the recovery location. Closing the gap will identify the trigger puller and other responsible parties in the illegal trafficking organization. Participants will also learn the importance of layering crime gun intelligence gathered from firearms trace information and IVN ballistics data to create actionable intelligence on firearms trafficking trends, routes, and trigger pullers to locate source areas and market areas of firearms, thus stopping the cycle of violence. Module 5 will introduce the participant into the illicit manufacturing of firearms and component parts. The purpose of this module will provide best practices for identifying essential firearm component parts used in the clandestine firearms manufacturing process. Illegal firearms manufacturing has become more profitable in recent years due to new technologies in the manufacturing process and the easy access to firearm parts through the internet. The participant will learn the different methods and techniques of clandestine firearms manufacturing in the production of privately manufactured firearms, or ghost guns, unfinished lower receivers, polymer receivers, and 3D printing of firearms. The participant will also learn to recognize the different types of illegal firearm conversions, such as the non-lethal to lethal conversion of alarm weapons, acoustic expansion weapons, and deactivated firearms. The participant will also be able to recognize the most common type of full automatic firearm conversion techniques and the component parts used for these conversions. Module 6 will provide the participant with a clear understanding of the capabilities of the IARMS database and how to incorporate it in their daily investigative work. The participant will learn the components of the firearms record, the trace request lifecycle. Each subsequent session will build upon the previous lesson, enhancing participant familiarity with all of the features of IARMS, while developing the skills and knowledge needed to conduct and answer a firearms trace. The participant will learn how to create, view, and search firearm records. Module 7 will introduce the participant into the principles of the chain of custody, evidence collection, and preservation, demonstrating that the importance of firearms and ammunition found at the investigative recovery site is an important source of information in a firearms trafficking investigation. The participant will learn the fundamentals and best practices of securing, preserving, and documenting a firearm recovery location. They will learn how to preserve the evidentiary chain of custody from the recovery location to the laboratory, to the evidence vault, and to the courtroom. The participant will learn best practices in firearms and shell casing recovery and how to safely secure these items while preserving trace evidence such as latent prints and touch DNA. The participant will learn the importance of correctly identifying and labeling each recovered firearm at the recovery site and how these actions tie into the chain of custody and subsequent admissibility into court. They will review how this information is used to prosecute crimes and resolve cases, thus improving the effectiveness of the justice system. Module 8 will introduce the participant into the understanding and emerging trends of firearms manufacturing and other lethal areas of conversion. The purpose of this module is to bring awareness to the participant of the different types of firearms and weapon platforms, including accessories and components that continue to push the legal limits of a firearm's capability. Police and customs need to stay vigilant and recognize when these components are used outside the manufacturer's intended design, as they may change the legal status of a firearm to contraband. The session will examine the use of firearms paraphernalia that alter the rate of fire of semi-automatic weapons to approach that of a full automatic firearm. The final module focuses on officer safety and will provide the participant with a practical awareness of the types and methods of firearm concealment and detection for officer safety. The purpose of this module is to demonstrate methods used to disguise and/or conceal firearms from law enforcement. These types of disguised and concealed firearms create additional threats to the police and the public. Recognizing them prior to encounters is critical for officer safety. These modules that I have reviewed, firearms trafficking and investigative techniques, firearms recovery protocol, IARMS, chain of custody, illegal firearms manufacturing, and concealed firearms officer safety, are designed to provide police, customs, forensic personnel, and prosecutors guidance and best practices towards our common efforts to combat small arms and light weapons in a safe and reliable manner, while preserving and securing evidence for court, aiding in the prosecution of illegal firearms traffickers. The EU LAS project is transitioning to a phase 2 training, which will complement these already discussed training modules, in addition to offering in-person training to include train-the-trainer events, allowing growth while sustaining and continuous positive transfer of knowledge. Thank you for your time, and please stay safe out there. I would now like to turn it over to my colleague, Wasim Dawson, with the Small Arms Survey.
Thank you, Ralph. Hello. I am Oisin Dawson, and I am the Weapons and Ammunition Management Specialist assigned to the EU LAS project. I will now provide an overview of the specific topics included in the stockpile management and security area of the EU LAS project. The aim of the trainings is to demonstrate how effective stockpile management practices can reduce the proliferation of weapons and ammunition. The trainings, which are delivered online, can assist states to update on current international best practices and guidelines relating to stockpile management, so that by the end of the training, they themselves can determine where their issues are and make assessments of how those issues can be addressed. Stockpile management is an essential element of counter-proliferation and ensuring the safety of explosives. The Foundation session provides an appreciation of how the safe, efficient, and effective management of national stockpiles of conventional ammunition and explosives enhances military, police, and customs capabilities. Efficient logistic and operational processes improve stockpile security and optimize safety. Conversely, poor stockpile management results in deterioration of weapons and ammunition, leading to an unsafe environment for local communities. Effective stockpile management also assists stockpile security, reducing illicit proliferation or theft, and identifying losses quickly. In order to manage a stockpile properly, there must be a firm understanding of the principles of stockpile management and of the nature of the ammunition contained in the stockpile. The baseline for this project and the trainings are the international protocols, agreements, and tools drafted to assist states in regulating the movements and storage of weapons and ammunition in and through their own country. Under the Programme of Action to Prevent, Combat and Eradicate the Illicit Trade in Small Arms and Light Weapons in all its aspects, governments agreed to improve national small arms laws, import-export controls, and stockpile management, and to engage in cooperation and assistance. This project is an example of such cooperation. The Arms Trade Treaty, International Tracing Instrument, and Protocol against the illicit manufacturing of and trafficking in firearms advises states on their obligations to prevent illicit proliferation of small arms and light weapons, including their ammunition, parts, and components. To assist states in managing weapons and ammunition at the operational level, the international community has developed 2 guidelines which support such efforts. The Mosaic, or Modular Small Arms Control Implementation Compendium, provides guidelines on weapons management issues, while the International Ammunition Technical Guidelines provides support on ammunition safety and security. One of the main focused areas is inventory management. Effective inventory management is an important component in ensuring that weapons and ammunition are counted correctly and are accessed by, issued to, and returned to authorized individuals. It also ensures a national authority fulfills its duty of care that only ammunition which is serviceable and safe to use is issued to security agencies for both training and operational use. There is also a duty of care to protect the civilian population in the local areas around weapons and ammunition storage areas by mitigating the explosive risk posed by these facilities. This topic is delivered according to the main principles of inventory management detailed in the International Weapons and Ammunition Management Guidelines. Marking of weapons and ammunition assists in the tracking, tracing, and management of inventory. Whether markings includes unique serial numbers or generic codes, markings can determine the likely origins of recovered weapons and ammunition. This is an important component that supports Interpol and WCO activities. Marking and record keeping is an integral process in weapons and ammunition management. Marking and record keeping is an important aspect of tracking and tracing and, of course, stockpile management. The session on marking and record keeping references the key information that is identified and the principles that are outlined in both the Mosaic and the IATG modules. The training also focuses on the types of marking methods. Examples of marking technologies are explained, and video demonstrations of such methods, such as stamping, casting, engraving, and various other methods are provided. Any storage site requires a strict code of practice and management, and in this regard, controlling access is paramount. Storage sites contain valuable equipment which is often attractive to criminal and terrorist organizations. Standard operating procedures, or SOPs, should be developed to guide and regulate operations, security, and safety. The management of storage sites ensure that they have enough resources to do the job. This session focuses on best practices such as vetting, access control, key control, and security procedures which are required to maintain the highest standards. Physical security is one of the most important aspects of stockpile management and preventing diversion and proliferation. A well-protected, secure site deters intruders. However, no secure facility is impervious to a determined attack, theft, or diversion from within. This topic outlines the baseline principles required to prevent incursions, thwart breaches, detect threats, and respond to such incidents. It is important ammunition storage is regulated and managed correctly. One of the main problems with managing explosives correctly is understanding the complex system of licensing these sites. The International Ammunition Technical Guidelines advise on this process. In this session, I try to ensure that each participant of the training understands the process of licensing and it can appreciate the many variables involved by explaining and demonstrating the process of licensing explosive storage sites. The transport of weapons, and particularly ammunition, need a high degree of safety and security when material is transported through centres of population. The transport of dangerous goods is internationally regulated, and strict rules are in place to ensure it is completed in a safe way. In the trainings, these rules are explained, as are the resources required both at the national and the international level. Well-maintained weapons ensure they last longer. It prevents surplus accumulation and reduces the requirement for their disposal, and as such, increase the risk of proliferation. In this topic, the maintenance of weapons is outlined and supported by video demonstrations which advise on the technical skills required to support this area. Equally, well-maintained and inspected ammunition is safer in storage, reduces the chance of accidental explosions, and lowers security risks. This topic discusses the maintenance and repair of ammunition and how we can set conditions which reduce explosive risk. Fire is the single biggest threat to ammunition storage sites. Specific firefighting instructions are applied in ammunition storage sites and are very different to fighting conventional fires. This topic focuses on the principles of fighting fires involving ammunition and explosives, and how we can reduce the risk of fire by applying drills and inspections that are put in place to help prevent fire in storage locations. The disposal of weapons and ammunition is always an important topic. This is the final stage in fulfilling the objectives in a successful life cycle program. However, sometimes deciding on when to dispose of ammunition can be a drawn-out process. Weapons and ammunition are expensive assets, and writing off large amounts of inventory needs careful consideration. This session discusses the various disposal options available and offers insights into the alternatives to destroying weapons and ammunition. As the project potentially moves into another phase, allow me the opportunity to briefly discuss the evolution of the trainings in the future. We plan to develop the trainings using a train-the-trainer model. The intention is to go into more detail on each subject area covered in Phase 1 by offering 3 distinct levels of training. Each level is designed for different roles and responsibilities. Level 1 is a 2-week course for storekeepers. Level 2 is a 1-week course for technicians. And Level 3 is a 2-week course for the stockpile manager. All 3 levels are delivered using a hybrid model of online and in-person trainings. An additional 1-week course is offered for those with weapons and ammunition planning and procurement responsibilities who operate at a strategic level. Organizations can choose which course they wish to participate in, but the intention is to provide a train-the-trainer option to those who engage in all 3 courses. In the past number of minutes, I've discussed the main topics which are the focus of the stockpile management and security trainings. In order to maintain attention and promote interaction amongst the participants, there are many questionnaires, polls, and exercises which are designed to encourage feedback and interaction by the participants. This concludes my brief overview of the trainings offered by the EU LAS project in stockpile management. I would like to encourage those of you with an interest in promoting stockpile management within your own organizations to get in touch with the project through your own chain of command. And if there are some topics relating to the area which are not covered, but you would like to hear more about, we are flexible to listening to your needs and including these topics in our sessions. So finally, thank you for the time. And now I'll hand back to Glenn, our project coordinator.
Thank you, Eugene. It remains to me to thank all members of the project team for their presentations. And of course, to thank those of you who are watching now for your interest in the project. We would encourage you to contact us directly for any information you need on the project, including the training courses, and you have our contact information here. General information on the project can be sent to myself, Frau Lubna Alam, and then you have expert contact information, the last part of the slide. Again, thank you to everybody, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. Shukran.